What follows is a reading from Henry David Thoreau from one of his journal entries. Specifically, it is October 29th, 1857. Thoreau was born in 1817, so that puts him at around 40 years old when this was written. I'm reading it from the year 2020, which is 163 years later. For me, today is October 21st. Personally, I find in Thoreau somewhat of a kindred spirit, and so his voice is never really entirely out of my head. The way that I help to keep his insight fresh in my mind is to periodically read from his journal. And the way that I do this is by trying to read it in season. It's rather season specific because he's very much a naturalist, and so as he describes the season, it helps if I can look at the same thing that he's looking at. With that in mind, it really helps me to slip into the role and try to imagine what it would be like to live over 150 years ago. Surprisingly, often I think it really wouldn't be that much different, or that much more difficult. In a lot of ways, it was simpler. Well, you decide for yourself, and I hope you enjoy this. There are some things of which I cannot at once tell whether I have dreamed them or they are real, as if they were just, perchance, establishing, or else losing, a real basis in my world. This is especially the case in the early morning hours, when there is a gradual transition from dreams to waking thoughts, from illusions to actualities, as from darkness, or perchance moon and starlight, to sunlight. Dreams are real, as is the light of the stars and moon, and theirs is said to be a dreamy light. Such early morning thoughts as I speak of occupy a debatable ground between dreams and waking thoughts. They are a sort of permanent dream in my mind. At least, until we have for some time changed our position from prostrate to erect, and commenced or faced some of the duties of the day, we cannot tell what we have dreamed from what we have actually experienced. This morning, for instance, for the 20th time at least, I thought of that mountain in the easterly part of our town, where no high hill actually is, which once or twice I had ascended and often allowed my thoughts alone to climb. I now contemplate it in my mind as a familiar thought which I have surely had for many years from time to time. But whether anything could have reminded me of it in the middle of yesterday, whether I ever before remembered it in a broad daylight, I doubt it. I can now eke out the vision I had of it this morning with my old and yesterday forgotten dreams. My way up used to lie through a dark and unfrequented wood at its base. I cannot now tell exactly, it was so long ago, under what circumstances I first ascended, only that I shuddered as I went along. I have an indistinct remembrance of having been out overnight alone. And then I steadily ascended along a rocky ridge half-clad with stinted trees, where wild beasts haunted, till I lost myself quite in the upper air and clouds, seeming to pass an imaginary line which separates a hill, mere earth heaped up, from a mountain, into a superterranean grandeur and sublimity. What distinguishes that summit above the earthly line is that it is unhandselled, awful, grand. It can never become familiar. You are lost the moment you set foot there. You know no path, but wander, thrilled, over the barren, pathless rock, as if it were solidified air and cloud. That rocky, misty summit, secreted in the clouds, was far more thrillingly awful and sublime than the crater of a volcano spouting fire. I think that men are generally mistaken with regard to amusements. Everyone who deserves to be regarded as higher than the brute may be supposed to have an earnest purpose, to accomplish which is the object of his existence, and this is at once his work and his supremest pleasure. And for diversion and relaxation, for suggestion and education and strength, there is offered the never-failing amusement of getting a living, never failing, I mean, when temperately indulged in. I know of no such amusement, so wholesome and in every sense profitable, for instance, as to spend an hour or two in a day picking some berries or other fruits which will be food for the winter, or collecting driftwood from the river for fuel, or cultivating the few beans or potatoes which I want. Theaters and operas, which intoxicate for a season, are as nothing compared to these pursuits. And so it is with all the true arts of life. Farming and building and manufacturing and sailing are the greatest and wholesomest amusements that were ever invented, for God invented them. And I suppose that the farmers and mechanics know it. Only I think they indulge to excess generally, and so what was meant for a joy becomes the sweat of the brow. Gambling, horse racing, loafing, and rowdyism generally, after all, tempt but few. The mass are tempted by those other amusements, of farming, etc. It is a great amusement, and more profitable than I could have invented, to go and spend an afternoon hour picking cranberries. By these various pursuits your experience becomes singularly complete and rounded. The novelty and significance of such pursuits are remarkable. Such is the path by which we climb to the heights of our being. And compare the poetry which such simple pursuits have inspired with the unreadable volumes which have been written about art. This has been read by pocket83. Thank you for joining me. I really hope you enjoyed it. It's inspiring how consistent Thoreau's message is. It's one of simplicity, and it really resonates with me. We need to stop, pay attention to now, and pay attention to the fact that many of the best pleasures in life are really simple things that we just simply need to stop and pay attention to. It really keeps me going, the message that Thoreau has, that you can just feel the sunlight on your skin and find complete satisfaction and solace in that, especially in a world that is increasingly unnecessarily stressful. Okay, see you later. Do good things out there.